I would never, ever buy land like Janelle is. That's not my dream.
The courtroom was silent when the clerk announced the case. On the docket, Brown v. Brown. To many, it seemed like just another civil case. But to those behind the walls of that courtroom, and to the millions of sister wives watchers around the world, this was not routine litigation. This was the dismantling of a family empire. And at the center of it all, a budgeting mistake so arrogant, so staggering, that it would come to be called the $1.8 million error. Christine and Janelle sat on one side of the aisle, poised and serene. Years of uncomplaining endurance had toughened them, not into bitterness, but into determination. They were no longer the wives who would nod wordlessly while choices were made for them. They were not any more the women to be told to trust the process as their dreams slipped away from them. Today they were plaintiffs, with truth, paper trails, and a sea of evidence. Across from them sat Kody Brown, his trademark blonde ringlets now streaked with gray, his jaw clenched in anger. Robyn sat next to him, holding a tissue, muttering prayers under her breath, glancing nervously around the room. They both had an inkling of what was about to be exposed. What they didn't have was any idea just how incriminating the evidence would end up looking once brought into the harsh fluorescent glare of a courtroom. The tale of the $1.8 million error started years ago in a prequel to this trial. On TV, audiences were given a vision, a dream of Coyote Pass. The property in Flagstaff was going to be the family's future, a legacy project with each wife having her own residence, constructed side by side, their kids playing freely on acres of open Arizona property. It was sold as a new beginning, an emblem of togetherness, evidence that plural marriage wasn't merely practical, it was visionary. But behind the scenes, the vision was shattering. The land in Coyote Pass was never purchased outright, according to documents later admitted into evidence. Rather, it was funded with a quilt of loans, personal guarantees, and moving LLCs. Kody had led the financial negotiations, frequently instructing the wives to trust him, assuring them that the property was an investment that would pay off. But buried in the figures was an increasing mountain of debt. And the choices Kody made, many of which Christine, Janelle, and even Mary knew nothing about, would ultimately add up to one disastrous figure, $1.8 million. The lawyer of the plaintiffs, Ms. Anna Chararma, started making the opening statement with precision. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the jury, "this is not merely a tale about a family disagreement. This is a case about trust. Trust that was exploited, trust that was used to get in debt, and trust that ended up costing this family more than $1.8 million. You will learn today of Mr. Kody Brown, who secretly diverted money, misrepresented responsibility, and put the financial well-being of several women and their children in jeopardy, all without the knowledge or permission of his co-owners. The proof will demonstrate that a family dream turned into a nightmare due to the arrogance and dishonesty of one man." The jury leaned forward. Even the court reporter's typing appeared more crisp. Kody's defense lawyer, Mr. Silas Croft, responded with his opening. He attempted to characterize the wives' case as an exaggeration, a dramatization to humiliate Kody following messy breakups. He argued that Kody acted in the best interest of the family at all times, that investments inherently come with risk, and that the plaintiffs were rewriting history out of spite. And then came the first exhibit, a string of bank transfers. Displayed on the screen, the transactions painted a picture no one could refute. Huge amounts were transferred from Family Traditions LLC, the corporation that held shared revenue from TLC contracts, into a shell corporation called KNR Holdings. The letters? Kody, Nathan, and Robyn. And from there, the trail of money became murkier. Payments to property tax liens, balloon payments on land plots, even luxury items that seemed to enrich only one family, Robyn's. Christine's eyes did not once leave the screen. Janelle took notes, her pen firm, her jaw clenched. The court was already starting to understand what they had endured, that while the other wives were instructed to cut back, to wait their turn, to give up for the dream, Kody and Robyn were directing funds elsewhere. And then, in a single sentence, Ms. Chararma dropped the figure like a sledgehammer. "Your Honor, our forensic accountant will show that the amount mismanaged, concealed, or diverted is $1.8 million. That is the error. That is the deception. And that is why we find ourselves standing before you today." The courtroom fell silent. Kody squirmed in his chair, his face red. Robyn had his arm in a tight grip, her tissue now wadded up. The $1.8 million wasn't a figure. It was symbolic. A symbol of trust being broken. A symbol of years of manipulation. A symbol of a never-to-be dream. Christine finally glared at Kody from across the aisle. Their gazes intersected for the shortest instance. Her expression wasn't anger-filled. It was freedom. She had borne the silence for far too long. And now the reality was finally speaking for itself, and that was only the start. The second day of testimony began with the kind of evidence no defense lawyer can spin his way around. Numbers. Numbers do not lie. Numbers do not manipulate themselves into stories or behind excuses. Numbers are cold, precise, and unforgiving. And in this case, the numbers testified to how $1.8 million just disappeared into thin air and into Kody's pockets. Plaintiff's lawyer Anna Chararma called the first expert witness, a forensic accountant named Michael Reese. Gray-haired, calm, deliberate, he made his way to the stand with a box of binders and a laptop. His tone was steady, but his words had the impact of a sledgehammer. "I was retained to analyze the money flow between Family Traditions LLC, KN&R Holdings, and a number of related accounts," he started. Christine and Janelle sat erect at the plaintiff's table. Mary, who was not a plaintiff here but a staunch supporter, sat behind them in silence. Robyn held her rosary in the back pew, her complexion ghostly white. Kody glared at the table, his jaw clenched. Reese clicked on his remote, and the screen in the courtroom lit up with the first slide. A plain timeline. 2018, Family Traditions LLC formed as the focal holding corporation for TLC deals, book advances, and other family income. 2019, KN&R Holdings LLC formed quietly by Kody and Robyn alone. 2020-2022, routine transfers of $10,000 to $25,000 directly into KN&R. Total siphoned by late 2022, $1.8 million. The jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Reese described how TLC's payments were to be divided equally via Family Traditions. The wives, Christine, Janelle, Mary, and Robyn, were instructed this was the way. Everyone pitched in. Everyone gained. At least that's what Kody taught. But the truth? KN&R became the quiet thief. Every fat check, every bonus, every residual, pieces of it were being diverted. Sometimes under the guise of taxes, sometimes under security improvements, sometimes simply miscellaneous. Then Reese flipped to the next exhibit, Robyn's house. The court saw mortgage statements, landscaping invoices, furniture receipts, all tied to KN&R funds. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reese said, "what you're looking at are family funds, pooled under the pretense of shared ownership, being redirected into the maintenance of one household alone, Kody and Robyn's." Christine's face was calm, almost serene. Janelle's expression was steel. Reese then showed something even more devastating, the tax liens. From 2020 to 2021, a minimum of 3 tracts of the Coyote Pass property went into delinquency since the taxes hadn't been paid within time. Christine and Janelle had been informed there was no money available. But at the same dates, tens of thousands were being directed out of Family Traditions into KN&R. In effect, Reese stated, the family communal land was threatened with foreclosure while Mr. Brown was siphoning money into his own private company. Kody squirmed. His attorney, Croft, objected on grounds that the plaintiffs consented by silence because they failed to seek monthly statements. The judge overruled. Silence is not consent, particularly when fraud is intentional. And then came the gut blow, the nanny payments. 2 weeks in a row, every time $3,076.390 was placed into Robyn's niece Mindy Jessup's bank account. That equaled out to $80,000 per year, while Janelle was being informed she could not fund a foundation on Coyote Pass, and Christine was rejected for Isabel's operation. The contrast was stark. A child's medical needs denied. A wife's dream home delayed indefinitely. And yet the nanny was paid executive-level salary on the dot every 2 weeks. The courtroom gasped. Christine lowered her eyes. Janelle clenched her fists. Mary's lips trembled, though she remained silent. Next, Reese addressed the TLC contracts themselves. For years, viewers wondered how much money the Browns earned. Now the reality was extrapolated for all to see. $180,000 an episode. Bonuses for reunion specials. Promotional pay for book tie-ins. Total revenue, millions. All checks went into family traditions. But after 2019, almost 87% of those dollars were diverted into KN&R. The plaintiffs, Reese summarized, saw little to none of these revenues. Their household expenses were reduced, while one household prospered. Silence. The figure $1.8 million burned on the courtroom screen like a branding. Anna Chararma rose, her voice firm. Mr. Reese, in your expert opinion, was this handling of finances in accordance with fiduciary duty? Reese hesitated. Not at all. No, it was a breach. An obvious intentional breach. The jury looked at Kody now, some in shock, some in silent disgust. And Kody, his face grew red. He cursed under his breath. His attorney wrote furiously on a legal pad. But no amount of writing could remove what the numbers revealed. Christine finally looked up, her eyes landing squarely on Kody. For years he had gaslit, manipulated, and minimized. But numbers don't gaslight. Numbers don't lie. They just reveal. That was the burden of the $1.8 million error. And the plaintiffs were not done. Because then came the insider's turn. The one person who witnessed it all, from inside Robyn and Kody's house. The person who would verify what the papers already screamed. The nanny. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. Numbers had been heard in Part 2, and the $1.8 million diverted through KN&R was seared into everyone's consciousness. But documents, no matter how incriminating, sometimes can be spun. Lawyers can spin arguments, experts can be refuted. What couldn't be so readily discredited? A voice from within. Plaintiff's lawyer Anna Chararma stood confidently before the court. Your Honor, the plaintiffs present for testimony, Ms. Mindy Jessup. Every eye was on her. Robyn bristled. Kody shifted back, his jaw clenching. Mindy, Robyn's niece and longtime family nanny to the Browns, approached. In a simple gray blazer and slacks, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, she bore no airs of television. She wasn't here to act. She was here to give testimony. She raised her hand, took the oath, and sat down. Her voice was firm but bore a weight of lived experience. Ms. Jessup, Anna started, you were employed by the defendants Kody and Robyn Brown from the latter part of 2019 up to mid-2022, right? Yes, Mindy replied, her voice steady. And what was your position in their home? I was employed as a nanny for their younger kids. But I also did homeschooling work, errands, and occasionally financial paperwork. The jury sat up at that last word. Anna leaned in. Financial paperwork? Can you explain? Yes. Occasionally I was asked to file receipts, scan statements, or hand documents to the family accountant. Anna paused, allowing the implication to settle. This wasn't just a nanny opening doors. Mindy had prepared documents herself. Who wrote your paycheck? Anna asked. KN&R Holdings, Mindy answered with ease. Not Kody or Robyn themselves? No, my direct deposits always originated from KN&R. The jury jotted down notes. The judge nodded again. Anna went on. And what did you make? $80,000 a year. Gasp ran through the courtroom. Although Reese's forensic accounting had already disclosed the amount, hearing it directly from the source hurt worse. Anna moved ahead. At this same period of time, were you familiar with discussions about Christine or Janelle being withheld access to funds? Yes, Mindy whispered. I heard a lot of phone calls. Christine would call, needing assistance with Isabel's surgery. Janelle would call about developing on Coyote Pass. Kody would always reply there wasn't enough money. And how did Robyn respond? Mindy breathed in deeply. She said Christine was playing him, that Janelle was irresponsible, that they were taking advantage of him. Christine's lips were pressed tightly together. Janelle just sat stone-faced, but her fists were clenched on her lap. Anna shook her head seriously. Ms. Jessup, have you ever heard the term the nest egg? Mindy glanced quickly at Robyn, then back at Anna. Yes. Kody and Robyn referred to K&R as their nest egg. They told us it was for the little ones. They told us the older children would not be able to grasp long-term planning. The courtroom became silent. Anna asked, "To your knowledge, were Christine, Janelle, or Mary ever asked about this so-called nest egg?" "No," Mindy declared. They weren't supposed to know. Robyn hid her face in her hands. Kody grumbled angrily under his breath. Anna pressed forward. "Ms. Jessup, you've explained hearing conversations. Can you remember one in particular that really stands out to you?" Mindy nodded, her tone dropping. It was last fall, 2020. Christine had called regarding Isabel's surgery. Kody was pacing the living room, screaming that Christine was guilt-tripping him. Robyn said, "If you give in now, they'll all think they can call you in whenever they want." She told him to be firm. Christine closed her eyes. Tears shimmered but did not fall. Janelle shook her head slowly. Anna let the silence hang before she asked, "So a child's surgery was handled as manipulation?" "Yes," Mindy breathed. The jury appeared ill, but Anna was not finished. She picked up a file and extracted a photocopy of an email. "Ms. Jessup, do you see this document?" Mindy looked at it. "Yes, that is an email I scanned for Robyn." "And what does it reveal?" "It indicates Kody directing the accountant to transfer $25,000 from Family Traditions LLC into K&R for estate planning. But it wasn't estate planning. It was to put Robyn's name on the property in Flagstaff." Whispers burst out in the courtroom. The judge pounded the gavel for quiet. Mindy didn't blink. Anna finished. "Ms. Jessup, why are you testifying here today?" Mindy squared her shoulders. "Because I witnessed what was done. I witnessed the double standards. I witnessed the dishonesty. And I knew if I kept my mouth shut, I was complicit too. I don't want to be complicit any longer." The jury looked at her in admiration. Christine and Janelle shared a nod of appreciation. Croft, the defense lawyer, rose for cross-examination. His tone dripped sarcasm. "Ms. Jessup, my clients paid you $80,000 a year. Aren't you a little ungrateful to be sitting here testifying against them?" Mindy met his stare. "I was grateful for the check. But not the lies." Croft sneered again. "Aren't you honest that you left on bad terms? That you hated Robyn?" Mindy shook her head serenely. "I left because I couldn't keep their secrets. I loved the children. I didn't want them to grow up in a home based on deception." Croft attempted again. "You expect this court to find you impartial?" Mindy's voice broke just a little, but her words hit hard. "I expect this court to find the truth. That's all." Silence. Even Croft, the veteran lawyer, paused. He had asked all his questions. Anna stood once more for redirect. Her words were quiet but firm. "Ms. Jessup, do you regret standing here today?" Mindy's eyes shone. "No, because for once the truth is louder than the lies." The courtroom surged, not in noise, but in energy. A shift, a collective breath. Christine grasped Janelle's hand. Mary, silent in the back row, allowed a tear to fall down her cheek. "And Kody?" His face was red. His fists were clenched. His kingdom of control, emotional, financial, spiritual, was disintegrating, one witness statement at a time. Robyn wept quietly, mascara running down her cheeks. The judge granted a recess. But the tension remained in the room, because now the jury had heard it not only from the paperwork, but from the words of someone who lived in the walls of Kody and Robyn. The $1.8 million wasn't an error. It was a plan, a lie, a betrayal, and the cracks in Kody's empire were now irreparable. But the trial was hardly over. Because next, the plaintiff's attorney would shine the light not on figures or nannies, but on the wives themselves. The women who had dwelled in Kody's home. The women who had suffered years of silence, and the women who were finally ready to speak. When court reconvened, there was renewed stillness. The jury had just heard Mindy Jessup reveal the secret money trail, the hypocrisy, and the behind-closed-doors discussions that branded Kody and Robyn as masters of deceit. But what everyone was holding breath for wasn't accountants or insiders' testimony. It was the wives' voices themselves, the women who lived under Kody's reign, the women who had witnessed the family falling apart, piece by piece. The women who had remained silent, but no longer. The judge nodded to Anna Sharma, attorney for Christine and Janelle. "Call your next witness." Anna rose, her voice soft and measured. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs call Christine Brown." Christine's testimony. The breaking point. Christine took her steps to the stand with quiet dignity. She was dressed in a navy blazer, glasses lightly balanced on her nose, her blonde hair pulled neatly back. She had the air of a woman come not only to testify, but to reclaim her voice. Once she had sworn the oath, she sat. The room leaned forward. Anna began softly. "Christine, for the record, can you declare your relationship to the defendant, Kody Brown?" Christine's gaze flickered for a moment toward Kody before returning to the attorney. "I was his third wife. Spiritual marriage in 1994. We were together for more than 25 years. Anna nodded. "Christine, what was the process of presenting financial decisions to you and the other wives over that period?" Christine took a breath, her tone calm. "They didn't, not exactly. We were instructed that we were an extended family, an extended team. But there were decisions made in secret. Robyn and Kody would speak in private, and we'd be informed later that there wasn't sufficient money for our requirements." "Did you think so then?" Anna asked. Christine's lips quivered a bit. "Initially, yes, I did. I felt Kody was doing the right thing for the family, but eventually I discovered that it wasn't true. Each time I questioned finances, I was informed that I was selfish or not considering the greater picture. Robyn, on the other hand, seemed to have everything she required." Anna moved closer. "Christine, can you say something about the time you asked for money for your daughter Isabel's operation?" Christine's calm was shaken. She gripped her hands together. Isabel had to have surgery on her spine. It wasn't something she could wait for. She hurt every day. I pleaded with Kody to assist with the expense to attend. He said that we didn't have enough money, that the family fund was depleted, that I should wait. Her voice broke. "But there was money. I know that now. He just didn't want to spend it on my child." Gasps ran through the gallery. Kody's jaw creaked, his fists clenched under the table. Robyn used a tissue to wipe away tears, mascara smudging barely. Christine straightened, her tone firming up. "That's when I realized. It was never about money. It was about control. Keeping us in check, making us feel beholden. My daughter's suffering was ignored so Kody and Robyn could guard their so-called nest egg." Anna allowed the pause to resonate. The jurors glared at Christine, their faces somber. She went on. "Leaving wasn't about a failed marriage. It was about survival. For my kids, for my sanity, and for me, and I will never regret leaving." Janelle's testimony, the silent struggle. Anna nodded sympathetically as Christine descended, her eyes brimming with tears but proud. Then she turned to face the court again. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs now call Janelle Brown." Janelle's procession to the stand was more subdued, less dramatic than Christine's. But her presence was potent in its own right. Serene, steady, with an unwavering sense of determination. She was the tactician, the Brown family's steady hand for years. Following the swearing in, she clasped her hands on top of the witness box and looked at Anna. "Janelle," Anna started, "you were Kody Brown's second wife, right?" "Yes," Janelle asserted. "And throughout your marriage, were you ever afforded equal access to family financial statements?" Janelle shook her head. "No. The books were controlled by Kody. We were informed there were family councils, but those were more a briefing. He'd tell us what he wanted us to know. If we questioned, he shut us down." Anna nodded. "Janelle, can you speak to the court about your experience with Coyote Pass?" Janelle's eyes grew darker. Coyote Pass was the dream. The land where we'd all put up houses and settle as one family at last. I wanted it more than any of you. I lived in an RV on that property for a while, just to show we could do it." Her voice hardened. "But Kody never intended for us all to have homes there. He used the dream to keep us invested, emotionally and financially. Every time I pushed to break ground, he said we couldn't afford it. But somehow we could afford Robyn's $900,000 house. Somehow we could afford security upgrades and nannies. But not foundations for my home, The jury leaned in. Anna inquired, "How did that make you feel?" Janelle's tranquil facade crumbled, her voice tightening with strained feeling. "It made me feel like I was disposable. That all the years of self-sacrifice, raising kids, working, contributing, didn't count for anything. I was instructed to wait my turn, but my turn never arrived. Kody used the promise of Coyote Pass to keep me on hold, with him secretly directing funds elsewhere. That is not betrayal. That is fraud." Her words lay thick in the air. Even the judge's own reserve softened. The cross-examination Kody's lawyer, Croft, sprang up quickly, quick to deflate the effect. His voice was crisp, near mocking. "Mrs. Brown," he began, striding slowly, "isn't it that you voluntarily chose to live in that RV? That no one pushed you?" Janelle's eyes narrowed. "Yes, I chose it. Because I believed in the dream of Coyote Pass. But I was tricked into thinking progress was arriving, when in fact the money was already spent." Croft smirked. "And you're claiming Kody intentionally misled you?" Janelle's tone was steel-like. "I'm saying he lied, repeatedly, and Robyn assisted him in lying." Croft spun around to Christine. "And you, Mrs. Brown, isn't it a fact that you left Kody prior to this lawsuit being filed? Doesn't that indicate that this is revenge?" Christine leaned forward, her words slicing through the room. "Revenge would be small time. This is justice. Don't conflate the two." The jury shifted, their faces radiating obvious empathy for the women. The emotional climax. As Christine and Janelle both resigned, the courtroom erupted with excitement. Their words weren't slick legal briefs or complex budgets. They were unvarnished lived moments. And those moments painted a dismal picture. Kids' medical needs disregarded. Homes promised then stripped away. Money handled behind the scenes. Women gaslighted into silence, belittled for having questions. The jury had witnessed the paper trail. They had listened to the nanny. But now, they had gazed into the eyes of the women who survived it. Christine fought for her daughter. Janelle fought for her dream. Both were lied to. Both were betrayed. And both were finally telling their truth. Throughout the courtroom, Kody sat rigid, his face alight with scarlet, sweat dripping down his brow. Robyn gripped his arm, whispering hysterically, but he refused to glance at her. His empire, constructed on half-truths, manipulation, and domination, was crumbling around him. And the whole world knew it. The judge adjourned, but the quiet that ensued wasn't a quiet that dissipated. It was a quiet that intensified the longer you sat there, for the wives had spoken, and their words would ring out far longer than the sound of the gavel falling. But the trial wasn't over yet. The second witness was tasked with providing testimony which would knock even the most steadfast assumptions and reveal the last piece of Kody's $1.8 million error. The courtroom was abuzz when the judge returned. Reporters softly spoke into their recorders, jurors shared hasty glances, and the gallery buzzed with the magnitude of everything Christine and Janelle had just testified about. But Anna Chararma wasn't done yet. She smoothed her papers, glanced up at the judge, and addressed the court with the same serene confidence she'd displayed throughout trial. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs call Mary Brown." The forgotten wife steps forward. Everyone watched as Mary Brown stood up from the gallery. She was the quiet shadow of the Brown family story for years. The first wife. The loyal one. The one who, after heartache, betrayal, and exclusion, did not very often speak out. She was identified to fans as the quiet soldier, the quiet one who had endured. But today, she didn't look like someone resigned to her fate. She looked like someone ready to finally speak. Mary wore a dark green blazer, her auburn hair framing a face set with determination. She walked steadily to the stand, swore her oath, and sat down. Her hands were clasped neatly together, but her eyes, sharp and piercing, never once wavered. Mary's testimony, years of silence. Anna leaned in, her tone soft. "Mary, tell the court your position in the Brown family." Mary nodded slowly. "I was the first wife of Kody, married to him legally until 2014, spiritually until..." She hesitated, her throat constricting. "Until I knew I was no longer a wife. Just a placeholder." There was silence in the room. Anna asked gently, What do you mean by that? Mary took a deep breath, her voice shaking but becoming more confident with every sentence. When Kody legally divorced me to marry Robyn, I was no longer his partner. I was no longer his priority. I was just present. He wasn't consulting me. He wasn't looking at me. And when I asked questions about money or family plans, I was waved away. He said I should be happy I was still in the family at all. Gasps circulated through the gallery. Kody fumed in his seat, his face flushing once more. Robyn caught his arm, speaking wildly, but Mary didn't even look their direction. Anna queried, "Mary, at that time, did you have access to financial data on Family Traditions LLC or Coyote Pass?" Mary shook her head. "No, I didn't know where the money was going. All I knew was what Kody was telling me, that things were tight, that we couldn't pay to build, that sacrifices had to be made. While Robyn's house expanded and her bills were always paid." Anna's tone was cold. "Did you ever ask Kody about these discrepancies?" Mary sneered. "Once, just once. I asked him why Christine couldn't get assistance for Isabel's surgery, or why Janelle couldn't begin constructing at Coyote Pass. Do you know what he told me?" The jury forwarded. He said, "You don't need to worry about things you can't understand. This is between me and Robyn." A murmur ran through the room. The betrayal. Anna nodded and drew out a file. "Mary, do you know this email?" Mary leaned forward, eyes squinting at the projected text. Her face went pale, but she nodded. "Yes, that's my email." And that's what he replied. Anna read on. "Mary, you're not involved in these decisions anymore. You haven't been for a very long time. If you want answers, speak to Robyn." The jury gasped once more. Anna spoke softly. "How did that make you feel?" Mary's voice broke. "Like I didn't matter. Like 30 years of being loyal meant nothing at all. I was erased, right there in black and white. And the worst part? I believed him. I thought perhaps I wasn't worthy of being mentioned. I thought perhaps this was my penalty for staying." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she did not avert her gaze from the jury. "But now I know it wasn't anything to do with me being worthless. It was because he was keeping something from me. He kept me in the dark because I was an easier silence. Because he knew I would not resist." Her voice became acidic. "But I am resisting now." Cross-examination Croft. Kody's lawyer jumped to his feet, his tone dripping with contempt. "Mrs. Brown, isn't it true that you voluntarily stayed with Kody for years following your legal divorce from him?" "Yes," Mary answered resolutely. "Then isn't it correct to say you accepted your role?" Mary shifted forward, her tone unflinching. "No, it means I hoped. I hoped that he would see me again. I hoped the husband I married would return. But he didn't. He chose Robyn. He chose deceit. He chose greed. And he lied to all of us." Croft scowled. "So you're bitter?" Mary's eyes flashed. "No, I'm awake." The jury grumbled in agreement, their faces set as Croft sat back down again, frustrated. The silent witness speaks loudest. When Mary took her seat again, the atmosphere was changed. Christine had introduced raw emotion. Janelle had introduced measured logic. But Mary? Mary introduced the soft destruction of someone who had been erased and was now refusing to fade away. Her testimony wasn't about money or betrayal. It was about pride. About being quieted so long that her voice, when she finally broke her silence, came crashing down like a gavel. The jury couldn't turn away. Reporters wrote furiously. The gallery hummed with half-whispered, "Did you hear him say that?" He said she wasn't included in decisions. And at the defense table, Kody's kingdom fractured a little more. His anger had been visible. His arrogance had been clear. But for the first time, there was something else in his eyes. Something he couldn't hide. Fear. Because if Mary's voice could shatter his image after years of silence, what else could be revealed before this trial was over? The answer was coming. And it would shake the courtroom to its core. The air in the courtroom shifted again, heavier than before, as Mary's testimony lingered in everyone's minds. The jury scribbled notes, their eyes fixed on Kody, who sat red-faced and visibly shaken. Christine and Janelle exchanged quiet, knowing glances, while Robyn clutched her tissue so tightly it nearly tore in her hand. Anna Chararma rose calmly and approached the judge. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to present the final financial audit prepared by our forensic expert. It directly outlines the $1.8 million discrepancy at the heart of this case. The judge nodded, gesturing for her to proceed. The projector screen sprang to life with spreadsheets, wire transfers, and yellow highlighted notes. Every figure, every digit was coupled with a piece of evidence. There it was in black and white, the systematic draining of money from Family Traditions LLC into KNR Holdings, the account which was under the control of only Kody and Robyn. The voice of the auditor was authoritative but unemotional, weighing heavy with authority. What we found was a pattern, not an isolated error. During the 3-year period, over $1.8 million in family funds were transferred through KNR Holdings without knowledge or approval of the plaintiffs. Those amounts were spent on private expenses, including mortgage payments on Robyn Brown's Flagstaff home, luxury personal items, and legal fees unrelated to the family's collective debt. Gasps filled the room as each category scrolled onto the screen. Christine and Janelle ducked forward, their lips clamped tightly as if holding on against the reopening of old sores. The jurors' faces set. Even the bailiff shifted, his jaw clenching at the blatantness of what was being displayed. The auditor highlighted a single transaction. Here, we have $250,000 as a land development expense on Coyote Pass. But when cross-checked with county records, no permits were ever recorded, and no development ever occurred. Instead, that money was diverted to a private trust in Robyn Brown's name. The courtroom erupted. The reporters tapped their keyboards wildly. The judge held up a hand for quiet, but even he couldn't suppress the flash of shock on his face. Anna addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't sloppy bookkeeping. This is intentional misrepresentation. This is betrayal. Kody rocked violently in his seat, his chair creaking in response to the sudden motion. That money was family, he snarled, his voice shattering the silence. I made those decisions to take care of us, to provide for the future. The words sounded empty. The judge cut him off with a stern reprimand. Mr. Brown, you will conduct yourself or face contempt. Kody slumped back, but his face was red with anger and desperation. Robyn spoke urgently in a whisper, trying to calm him down, but the harm was done. The jury had witnessed his wrath, and they had listened to his rationalizations. Anna pressed forward, her tone precise. You'll also notice that during the same period, Kody claimed the family was too broke to fund Isabel's surgery, too broke to help Janelle with housing, too broke to support Mary's independence. He was channeling tens of thousands into private vacations, security upgrades, and luxury furnishings. The priorities were never about the family. They were about control. Christine's eyes were shining. She wasn't smiling anymore. She was just looking at the figures that confirmed what she had suspected all along. Janelle's jaw was clenched, her fists balled in her lap, but her silence spoke louder than words. The auditor finished with a last declaration. In my expert opinion, this was not a mistake. This was a willful and systemic abuse of funds. The judge permitted the evidence to stay visible as the jury digested its full impact. The silence in the room was stifling. Kody drummed his foot almost frantically under the table, his rage barely in check, as Robyn's tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Anna allowed the silence to hang before speaking once more. Your Honor, the plaintiffs have suffered years of emotional and financial manipulation. Today, they appear before you not only for themselves, but for every child, every sacrifice, every promise that was broken because of Kody Brown's decisions. The evidence speaks for itself. The betrayal can't be denied. And the price tag, $1.8 million, is on every page you've just heard. She took a step back, her tone growing gentle as she looked in the direction of the jury. This isn't about money. It's about trust. And once trust is lost, it can't be restored. The judge adjourned for a recess, but no one got up immediately. The jurors remained statued. The audience murmured in shock. And the vision of Kody's empire falling apart one transaction at a time lingered in the air. Kody buried his hands in his face, his shoulders heaving. Whether it was out of anger, out of terror, or the dawning comprehension that the truth was no longer his to own, no one could tell. But seeing him there, shattered and boxed in, was saying more than words ever would. And while the trial was not yet finished, everyone knew what they just saw. The instant Kody Brown's well-built empire started to crumble, not in a bang, but in a spreadsheet. Would the verdict be his ultimate downfall? Or was there yet one more hidden secret waiting to burst forth? That hung in each and every heart as the court adjourned, leaving the atmosphere heavy with tension. The last day of testimony had a feeling of inevitability, but nobody was ready for how oppressive the silence became when the judge stepped to the bench. The jury had already witnessed the paper trail, heard the accountants, listened to the wives, and watched Kody disintegrate. But now it was coming to an end, either way. Christine and Janelle sat side by side, solid and unshakable. Their eyes were no longer brimming with fire. There was a profound quiet instead, the kind that appears when truth no longer needs to be bellowed but merely demonstrated. Christine's tiny smile flickered through the tension of it all, and Janelle's poise spoke volumes. This wasn't for revenge. This was about liberation. Mary sat a row behind them, still, ghostly in her presence. She hadn't had to say anything. Her silence had already bellowed louder than words. For the first time, she raised her chin, looking the judge in the eye. And in that tiny, discreet movement, the gallery collectively held its breath. Across from them, Kody was a tempest bottled in a suit. His fists were white on the table, his jaw working back and forth like he could gnaw through the verdict. Robyn had a white-knuckled hold on his arm, weeping openly, her makeup streaking in black rivulets, praying under her breath for no one to hear. They both resembled less like victors and more like the final defenders of a kingdom already reduced to ash. The judge's tone was firm, measured, each word landing like the gavel itself. He read through the charges: breaches of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, intentional infliction of harm. Each for the plaintiffs sent a crack that seemed to split across Kody's face. By the third one, he wasn't merely angry. He appeared empty. And then the judge leaned forward a little, his voice deeper, nearly somber. Deliberate fraud was carried out in this court. Properties were concealed. Families were cheated. Faith was shattered irretrievably. This judgment restores what was stolen, but it can never mend what is lost. Christine's eyes welled, but she did not weep. Janelle's breathing shook, but she did not shatter. Both of them stood as women who had borne the burden of silence and had finally laid it down. Kody leapt to his feet, his voice hoarse and trembling. "You don't see? It wasn't about money. It was about survival." His words sounded desperate, but the judge's gavel fell on them with a single blow. And it was done. The second time the gavel fell. Final. Irrevocable. The courtroom broke out, reporters clacking furiously, onlookers murmuring, and Christine and Janelle hugging in mute victory. Mary dabbed a single tear from her cheek, her expression inscrutable. Kody slumped back into his chair, eyes blankly staring ahead, as if he had realized at last the truth. His empire was not stolen by outsiders, but fell apart from within. Robyn covered her face with her hands, her tears ringing out like a world ending. As Christine and Janelle approached the doors of the courthouse, light spilling in from outside, a voice broke through the fray, one of the reporters. Clutching a new piece of paper, waving it in the direction of the crowd. "This just arrived," the reporter yelled. Sealed evidence from a federal probe related to the Browns. If this is true, this isn't over. The flashbulbs on the cameras went mad. Christine stalled for a second at the entrance, her grip on Janelle's hand tightening. They locked eyes, half fear, half resolve. Behind them, Kody's head still lay motionless. His eyes blazed not with defeat, but with something more sinister. Something threatening. And in that moment, everyone knew. The verdict might have decided this fight. But the war for the Browns' legacy had just begun. The screen goes dark. Text overlay. To be continued.